In today's video, I'm going to give you 10 really useful watercolor mixing recipes. So I've picked 10 of my absolute most useful recipes today, and I'm going to choose colors. I'm going to be mixing from colors that you probably already own. So there's nothing weird, no sort of strange Peroline violets in here, just colors that you probably already own. We're going to mix 10 useful new colors. So let's get started. So hopefully you can see okay, we're about 2 weeks away from our shortest day of the year here in the UK, and it actually gets dark at about 3:45 p.m. at the moment, so I'm only about an hour away from darkness. Now the first colour we're going to make is a colour for sunsets, a lovely sunset pink. So I'm going to start with some permanent rose, but you can do this with any pink such as an opera pink or a quinacridone pink. So just your standard bright pink. Now at a push you can try an alizarin crimson, but you just won't get such a bright result. What you want to mix it with is a really warm, transparent yellow. The warmer and more transparent, the better. I've got some options here. I've got some cadmium yellow deep. I've got this Winsor & Newton transparent yellow. I've got an azo yellow, or an Indian yellow would be perfect. Now yellow ochre is a little bit murky for this, so what we're looking for is a color that looks like this. So we're going to mix our permanent rose with our warm yellow, and depending how much you put in, we can go all the way from orange to these beautiful warm coral pinks and make the perfect color for a sunset. So let's stay with our pink and let's stay with the sky theme. Next up is my favourite recipe for making stormy cloud shadow colours. So this time I'm going to add some Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey is mostly blue pigment and it's quite muted, so you'll get these beautiful muted purples. You can see you can really take this down to be a very delicate colour indeed, but you can also make something much stronger if you need it, and get those beautiful stormy shadowy colours for your sky. Let's use our Payne's Grey again, but this time we're going to make a beautiful muted grey green. So I've got some lemon yellow here, but honestly this will work with any of the yellows. You'll just get warmer, more khaki tones if you use a warm yellow, and we can use our Payne's Grey and start mixing some lovely muted grey greens. So if you've got a set and you've only got bright greens in your set, this is a great way of mixing some more neutral muted greens. And it doesn't have to be weak like this. Let's go stronger. And one tip for mixing colours is you want to start with the lightest, least saturated colour. So I'm starting with the yellow here because the Payne's Grey is so strong that if I dumped a load of it on my paper, I could end up, I'd literally have to use a whole tube of yellow to bring it back to green. So we're starting with the yellow, popping the Payne's Grey in, and we can get some really interesting, slightly muted greens. As I said, you can do this with any of the yellows. Now, I love to paint gardens and I love painting those bushes of lavender. And I've got a colour here which is Cerulean Blue, and we've got our permanent rose again. Now cerulean is a weak colour, and it's actually, although it looks a little darker, it's actually weaker than the permanent rose. So we're going to do it the other way round this time. We're going to add the blue first. And this beautiful soft granulating colour can make all sorts of pretty lilacs. So we'll add just the smallest amount of our permanent rose. And here we can start making these beautiful lavender colours. You can also allow the colours to mix slightly on the paper, easily painting these light and pretty lavender colours. So I've added a yellow, so we've got 3 colours now, and these are all cool versions of the primaries. So we've got our permanent rose or any pink, we've got our cerulean blue, and we've got our lemon yellow. We're going to mix them all together to make a light neutral. Now imagine I was actually painting a picture of this ceramic dish, or perhaps this roll of tape, or even someone with a light skin tone like myself. This will also mix a Caucasian skin tone, so it will mix these pale neutral colours for things like ceramics and pathways. And it will also mix Caucasian skin tones. If you need to mix African or Asian skin tones, you'll need to pick darker, warmer primaries. I've got a video all about doing that. So we're going to start with water because this is going to be a watery mix because we need a light colour. I'm going to start with some yellow and some blue, being very careful with the amounts of pink because the pink is so strong. And what you'll do is you'll balance this colour. So if it starts to look purple, you'll say to yourself, well, purple must be the pink and the blue. I need to add more yellow. If it starts to look green, you'll say, well, that's the blue and the yellow makes green, so I'll add more pink. And what you'll start to do is neutralize this color. I'm going to go a little darker with that because I'm suspecting you can't see it easily on camera. I filmed a whole YouTube short the other day mixing some of these pale neutral colors, and honestly, I have a young girl called Chloe who helps me with editing, and she said, Michelle, just can't see this on the screen. So let's try this. So we can get a whole range right from these very soft, warm grays. And then if we want to go a little warmer into sort of more creams and skin tones, we can go stronger with the pink and the yellow and start warming that mix up. You'll often see recipes for neutrals that are using opposite colors. But I always prefer to mix from the primaries like this because if you're mixing from a colour that's a secondary, like a purple, you don't have any control over how much red and how much blue is in that pre-mixed purple. So when mixing soft neutrals like this, I'll always go back to the primaries and look how useful these colours can be. We're halfway through, and if you're enjoying this video, please do remember to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's completely free and it's fully CAD approved. Now for mixing complex shades where I need to get it exactly right, I do prefer to go for the primaries, but sometimes when you just need to mute a bright colour, an opposite colour is good. So let's go back to our lemon yellow here, and I want to paint sort of a wheat-filled colour, but you can see this is just way too bright. Now the opposite colour of yellow is purple, so I've got a little bit of some permanent blue violet here. I'll paint it directly on the paper so you can see how it looks. So it's a bright, strong purple. Now if we mix just a little bit into our yellow, we'll just begin to neutralise it a bit. And straight away we've got a colour that looks much more realistic in a landscape just by muting it with its opposite. So talking of muting colours, when I used to teach classes, real world classes, I still teach online classes. When I used to teach classes, people would often grab their yellow ochre to paint beaches, and sometimes it was just too bright. Now, I have an audience here of people from all over the world, so of course it depends where you live. But if you just want to mute a yellow ochre like this, one of my favourite ways is by adding a touch of raw umber. So raw umber is a very cool, very weak colour, and it's often completely overlooked in people's palettes. It can appear to be very unimpressive, but it's such a useful colour. Not only can you use it on its own for things like branches, but when we mix it with our yellow ochre and water it down a little bit, we get some much more realistic looking beach and sandstone colours that are so useful in a landscape and will stop what I used to refer to on my students' work as banana beaches. Now, another thing my students often used to struggle with was getting natural looking browns. So often the only dark brown that's included in a beginner's set is this one, which is burnt umber. And as its name suggests, it's a beautiful, warm, chocolatey brown. But unless you're painting children's illustrations, it can often just be too rich and warm for things like tree trunks and earths, which are much more of a neutral brown. So a really simple trick here is just to get some ultramarine and mix this in. It's going to neutralize and cool your brown down. You can adjust how warm you want it. The more of the blue you add to the mix, the further towards grey you're going to push it. And certainly here in the UK, earth and tree trunks are far more likely to be this neutral brown than this warm, rich colour here. I'm going to bring my Payne's grey back here and show you a really fun mix that sometimes works for things like roadways, tarmac, or even those black type of roof tiles or the felt that they put on rooftops. When it's that kind of red-grey colour that you really don't quite know how to mix, what we're going to do is we're going to mix our Payne's grey with some oxide red. Now, the oxides are really interesting because they come in a huge range. Within the same pigment range, you get so many different variations, and oxide reds often have different names. So it may be called red oxide. The more burgundy toned ones are often called Venetian red. It could be English red, or in some ranges of paint, it's even called light red. I've got a little manufacturer's sample here, so let's swatch some of this. This is quite a warm one. And all we're going to do is we're going to add our Payne's grey, and we can start to get those really interesting colours. So rather than painting a rooftop or a road, just a standard dull grey, we can get some really interesting combinations with our red oxide and our Payne's grey, and they'll glow much more than using a tube grey or even, worst of all, a black. Earlier on, we mixed some lovely natural grey greens, but if you want some really bright greens but still natural looking, then one of my favourite combinations is to use some phthalo blue. So phthalo, you can get blues and you can get greens in phthalo, and the blue is a lovely bright turquoise colour. What you're going to do is mix some of your slightly warmer greens. So I like to go up a little bit from a lemon, possibly getting closer to a cadmium yellow. Here I've got a cadmium yellow deep, and again we can get some bright, interesting greens, but we can also use those warmer, transparent yellows, such as this Aureolin that I used earlier. And Indian yellow is very similar. And again, we can get a beautiful selection of greens. Every one of these could be adjusted with more or less yellow or blue to make a vast array of natural looking but bright and colourful greens. So before you go, I just want to say thank you to all of you who sent good wishes to my elderly cat Gimlet. Not only is he the mascot of our channel, he's also my best friend in the world. He had a bit of a near-death experience at the vets. He's fully recovered now. My friend bought him a Christmas blanket and he's been enjoying sleeping by the heater. Do let me know in the comments if you're going to try any of these watercolour recipes, or perhaps you have your own favourite recipes to share. And before you leave this video, don't forget to look in the video description. There's lots of free stuff down there. I've got some free downloadable PDFs, also got some free watercolour painting courses you can take for no money whatsoever. And I'll put another interesting colour mixing video up for you to watch right now.